The auditorium was silent, except for the restless shuffling of feet and the quiet hum of the air conditioning. Hundreds of students had gathered, not for a football rally, not for a performance, but for a meeting that would decide their future. At the front of the hall stood the university president, a tall man in his 60s. Dressed in an immaculate suit, his expression carved from stone. He had made his position clear before. Change is unnecessary. Our traditions are strong enough. But tonight, facing him was a student whose determination burned brighter than the chandeliers above. Her name was Kennedy. She was 21 years old, with tired eyes from sleepless nights of study and protest, but a voice that carried the fire of conviction. She had not come to speak for herself, but for everyone who had been overlooked, silenced, and dismissed. The issue seemed simple. 2 outsider students were demanding reforms to address the rising costs of education, the lack of mental health resources, and the exclusion of underprivileged communities from campus opportunities. But to those inside this university, it was a war between the old guard and a generation unwilling to be crushed by it. The president had already spoken for nearly half an hour. He listed financial constraints, policy limitations, and the importance of preserving tradition. His words were eloquent but cold. He had rehearsed them, polished them, and delivered them like a lawyer defending an unshakable case. When he finished, he leaned back, adjusted his glasses, and announced firmly, "This discussion is over. The university cannot accommodate your demands." The crowd murmured in disbelief. Some students dropped their heads in defeat. A few whispered angry remarks. But Kennedy remained standing. Her fists trembled slightly, not with fear, but with the sheer weight of knowing this was her moment. "Mr. President," she began, her voice steady but laced with emotion, "with all due respect, the discussion is not over because we are still here. And we are the reason this university exists at all." The room froze. Every eye turned toward her. Kennedy took a deep breath. "You speak of tradition. But what is tradition worth if it silences the voices of the present? You speak of financial limits. But what about the limits we face as students who work 2 jobs to pay tuition, who skip meals because the dining plan is too expensive, who sit in class with anxiety clawing at our minds because counseling is booked for months? You talk about what the university cannot do. Let me tell you what the students cannot do. We cannot keep pretending we are fine while drowning in silence." Her words cracked, not from weakness, but from the raw truth spilling out of her. Students began to nod, some wiping away tears. They hadn't expected. The president shifted uncomfortably, clearly not used to being challenged so openly. "Miss Kennedy, I understand your passion, but emotional arguments do not change the realities of administration." That was when Kennedy's reply pierced through the air like lightning. "Then maybe it's time the administration listens to the reality of emotions. You see numbers, statistics, and budgets. We see our classmates disappearing, dropping out, breaking down, giving up. You say it's not possible to change, but we are living proof that it must change. Because if a university cannot care for the people who fill its classrooms, then what exactly is it preserving?" The silence that followed was unlike anything before. Kennedy's voice wavered, but she continued. "My father once told me that education is supposed to be the great equalizer. He worked 2 shifts to send me here, believing that this place would open doors that were closed to him. But when he visited last month and saw me collapse from exhaustion, he asked me if this equalizer was worth breaking me in the process. I couldn't answer him, but I am answering you now. We are not asking for luxuries. We are asking to be treated like human beings. And if this university cannot recognize our humanity, then maybe it is not worthy of the pride it so loudly proclaims." A sob broke out somewhere in the crowd. Another student clapped quietly, then another, until the entire hall thundered with applause, shouts, and tears. Students stood on their feet, united not by anger, but by the deep resonance of her truth. The president's lips tightened. For a moment, it seemed he would dismiss her once again. But as the applause refused to die down, his eyes flickered not with anger, but with something unspoken. Perhaps guilt, perhaps recognition, perhaps the first cracks in a wall he had. Built for decades, Kennedy didn't wait for permission. She stepped down from the microphone, and students surrounded her, hugging her, thanking her, crying on her shoulder. The president remained still at the podium, dwarfed not by the size of the crowd, but by the undeniable weight of what had just occurred. The meeting ended not with his words, but with hers. And in the weeks that followed, the ripple effect was undeniable. Students organized with new strength. Faculty members, once silent, began to speak out in support. Alumni sent letters urging the administration to reconsider. Small changes came: first extended counseling hours, financial aid reassessments, but they were enough to prove that Kennedy's voice had not been in vain. Years later, people would still talk about that night, not about the speech the president gave, but about the moment a single student's reply cracked open an entire institution's heart. And whenever Kennedy told the story herself, she would smile and say, "I didn't bring the audience to tears. The truth did." Because sometimes change doesn't begin with a policy or a law. Sometimes it begins with a single voice refusing to be silenced.